Hi, so in this video we're going to be creating wheel patterns, so the tires, the complicated patterns, and I'll show you how to build them up from little areas and then duplicate into these complicated patterns. So you can use this technique for many other things, but for this tutorial I'm going to demonstrate just the wheel. So I've got my reference, I created a polyplane and I've put it onto a display layer here. So I'll just call that tyre underscore ref, and then I tapped. So in order to put this polygon plane there, I selected this option, which is create layer and add selected, and I put my reference onto a shader, which was a surface shader. So I held down right click, went to assign favorite and surface. So that's just a very flat shader, and then input the texture from Google onto there. So you can probably see where it came from based on the fact we can see Shutterstock there. So then I'm going to tap this twice, so it's reference. So now I can't select it and break my scene. So I'm going to put down a polygon. And what we need to do is we need to create a small area and then bit by bit duplicate it. So at the moment what I'm thinking is I could just create this one square, and then actually yeah, I could probably create this square area. So actually I'll draw it out for you. So I'm going to remove my subdivisions. I'm going to go to the top view and then press 6. Turn off the grid because it's quite annoying. And if I shift this up, scale it a bit. So the plan is, if I go to edge mode, if we can just create one small area that can then be flipped to this side, and then we can attach it, and then we can flip it again, then that'll be the beginning of our pattern that we can just duplicate. So that's the theory. So this might vary from pattern to pattern, but in this instance, what I'm looking for is I'm going to try and get halfway in between here, so round here, down there, and there. So these edge ones I'll bring in. So I just want a bit extra on the edge. Okay, so I'll just pull this up and pull this one up as well. And these edge ones, they could probably come in a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to use the scaling tool just to make sure they're exactly in line with each other. Cool. So we have the base, and now we have this outer area. So I'm going to cut into this a bit, and the reason for doing that is because I then want to extrude this bit outwards. So in my head what I'm thinking is these black bits will be the outer bits, and then what I've drawn out with this polygon so far, that'll just be the flatter bit, so that the extrusion inside. So I'm going to go back to object mode, and then I'm going to hold down shift, right click, and actually I'm going to raise this slightly higher, it's intersecting. So shift, right click, go to insert. Can I use, yeah, insert, because I was thinking about using the multi-cut, but I don't think we need that. So I'm going to go back to top viewport, press 4 on my keyboard, No, we don't want 4. What do we want? We want X-ray. So shading and then X-ray. I just want to be able to see both. So I'm going to place a cut there and a cut there, another one, and another one. Awesome. So now we have this almost diamond shape, pretty much. And then I'm going to face mode, and I will select this one, hold shift, right click, go to extrude face. So I didn't like it that time. And raise it up. So based on my grid scale, this is probably going just over ½ centimeter up. Okay, then I'll go back to top view. So this is the first piece of the pattern. So now what I'm going to do is I want to move this pivot because I'm going to start to duplicate it across. So I'm going to press insert. You see it's changed the manipulator. Then I'll hold down V, which is snapping. You'll see at the top of my screen, whenever I tap V, it turns on this magnet with a sphere next to it. So I'm going to drag it to that end one. I'm going to press W to go back to just the standard move, and then press Control D, which is duplicate. Press R to go to scale, and rather than do it manually, I'll just check which direction. Okay, so I need to flip it to the other side, so I know that's X. So rather than do it manually, I can just go to the scale X in the channel box and just put a minus there, so we get that. Okay, so now I've brought it across, and I can now combine these two. So I'll select one, shift select the other, hold down. Actually, is there a quick way of doing that? Somewhere. There are so many sneaky little menus. So I'll hold down spacebar, go mesh, and combine. Didn't work that time because Maya's a prankster. Cool, we've got another section. Going to go back to my top view just to see how much further I need to bring out this edge. Okay, so it's going to break the pattern a bit if I just do that, for example. So I might be inclined to slightly scale this. Whoops, I had them selected still. I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm just going to scale it so it's more uniform to approximately the middle. So this doesn't need to be 1 for 1, really. It depends what you're doing. If you're working with cars for car commercials, then you should probably already have a CAD file anyway. So I'm going to shift the pivot again. So I pressed insert, hold down V. I'll snap to this corner for the purpose of duplicating again. So I'm going to press Control D. And now we need to move this new model into the X. So on the X, I'm going to add a minus. So minus, there we go. Sweet. It's just disappeared. There it is. Cool. Select one, then the other, spacebar, mesh, and then combine. So now we have this one bit. We'll go back to object mode. Object mode, come on Maya. Okay. Great. And just to check, I'm going to press 3 to do the smoothing. So with your pattern, it's probably at this point to check how you want it to look. So if we smooth this in sorry, if we smoothed it in the renderer, so I'm using Maya, so Arnold, if I added on the subdivisions in the attributes tab, that's what we're going to get. So let's say I want it to be a bit more rigid, then I would need to, I could have done this on the first iteration, but I just left it. So let's add in some edge loops. So to get to that menu, just to recap, it was Shift whilst hovering over the model, so object mode, Shift, right click, and then insert edge loop. I clicked the option box. I'm going to change the number of edge loops to 2, and then make sure that's selected. Use equal multiplier. I'll select on this edge and press R for scale and just scale them up towards the edges. And then when I smooth, now we're getting more refined edges. And now I could do something similar with the top bit, but I won't be able to do it in exactly the same way because of the world space that I'm manipulating in. So where's my manipulator? So you see I was able to scale upwards because we're in the world space. So when I scale upwards, everything goes uniformly up or down. So if I do equal cuts, edge loops there, and when I try scale in the X, it will end up bringing these two edges inwards. Yeah, it won't look right, so trust me. So I'm going to go hold Shift, right click, insert edge loop, relative distance from edge. I'm going to pop one in this area, pop one in over there, go back to object mode, and then press W, and then press 3. So look at that compared to what we had over there. As we were duplicating, be aware that you will need to merge vertices. As you can see there, some of these points are still not merged. So I'm just going to quickly merge a bunch of these. So you select the polygons, hold Shift, right click, merge vertices, and then once you've done it once, you could just select a bunch more and then press G, and that's repeat command. And just to check that it's worked, I'm just going to select that area, that point. So if they weren't merged, it would just drag one point away. So I'm going to select all of these, and then the other ones. So I'm holding Shift and Control, and then Shift, right click, merge. Cool. And this distance threshold is just indicating if they're not, they might not merge. It depends on the distance, basically. So the higher you increase the distance threshold, then it will look for the vertices further away. So if it's too high, all of this would just connect together. Great. So I'm going to quickly add in those extra edge loops.
12 seconds later.
Okay, so now we have this pattern. I'm pretty happy with that. So when I switch between 1 and 3, there's still a fair amount of stretching. But because this is going to be rubber, you know, I think I'm okay with that. I'm not particularly putting a texture on it, but just be aware of the stretching. When you're making your pattern, if you want to put a lovely texture on it and then smooth it, look at how far these are stretching, these edges. So that's something to be aware of. But as I said, this would be rubber. And also it's going to be duplicated about 100 times. So I'm being cautious on the polygon count. So now what I'm going to do is press insert and snap to one of these edges. Press W, Control D, and actually, because of where the point is, I need to snap backwards, so I'm just going to shift it back a bit, hold down V, and then snap there. Actually, I'm going to see, there is a slight gap, so I'm going to see how well it will snap to the other side. So let's bring it to the other end. Hold V and snap. So snapping to the right area. Nope. Hold V and snap. I'll just double check in wireframe. Cool. Press 5 to go back, or 6 actually, so I can see the texture. So I have this slight gap there. So what I could do is try and combine these and then see if I can get away with just selecting all the vertices in that general area. Oh no, actually I should probably just select these, and I can play with the distance threshold of my vertice, what's it called? Merging vertices tool. Cool. So I've selected that line, hold down Shift, right click, merge vertices, then I'm going to go to the box. So I'm going to see what it does straight off the bat. Press apply. So it's probably merged some of them. So I'm going to slowly bring that up. 0.05. Okay. Slightly too much now. So split the difference. Okay. No, I'm not happy with that. So I might just have to do this manually. So for this first pattern, I just want to make sure that I can duplicate this in a nice as possible way. So I'm just cleaning up these smaller patterns. So now that I've merged one together, then I can just merge these other two.
346 minutes later.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to object mode. So I want this pattern to be matching on either side, so I can duplicate across. I'm just going to see how it's looking. Cool. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Right, so I'm going to reduplicate that. I was just checking how it was coming together. Now I need to move the pivot point, so I'm going to press Insert, V, hold down V, move that point, press W, hold down V again, snap there. Ah, these aren't matching. So I think I fixed the other side, the other end. Again, I've shifted one into place, and I was just checking whether they were lining up. So I want to just check if I can get away with mesh combining. and doing an en masse merge vertice. Okay, what you might want to be aware of is just how your edges are connecting together. So in this instance, for this demonstration, I'll just show that this is essentially how you do it, and you'd want to make sure that one end can fit into the other end. So the front would snap perfectly into the back. And then what you can do from then is, so I'm going to move this pivot to the back, press W, and you can either do this a few ways. So I could do Control D and then move that into the appropriate place, and then start pressing Shift D, and that will just keep on duplicating out for as long as you want, and then you end up with this big old pattern. Okay, so another way of doing it, creating this pattern that we've just done there, so we did that by hitting Control D. You can also do Control Shift D. Does it bring up the tools? No. Okay. So let's hold down spacebar, go Edit, Duplicate Special. So what we were doing before was duplicate with transform. So we initially duplicated one pattern with Control D, and after we'd moved it, then you can do duplicate. So the next one will include the transform, and then we just kept doing that over and over. So if I open up Duplicate Special, so that didn't actually bring up the menu. Come on, okay. Now you can just create instances, or if you want an actual copy of the geometry, so an editable form of it, which we do, it's just going to be a copy. And Smart Transform, okay, so we can tell it an amount to move in a certain direction. So we'd want it to move in the Z axis. So X, Y, Z. I don't know exactly how far, but I'm going to take a guess and say 2. Let's try 5. Too much. Let's try 4. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. 4.5. Cool. Okay, so we're going to keep on doing that. Copies, let's say now we've got 2, so 98. Look at that, in a split second, we've got 100. So now, with all these, I can then hold down spacebar and go Mesh, Combine. So now we have this one mesh. And that's 31,200 polygons. So it's creating a lot of information for not much effort. So we already have this tire track there. It's pretty cool. Let's see if we can smooth it. So it's not so sure about that. So let's press yes. Okay, it didn't crash, that's good. but now we have, when it's smoothed, we have 499,000 polygons compared to 31,000-ish. That looks pretty nice. Cool. Right, so let's turn this into an actual wheel. So what we can do is hold down spacebar, go to deform, and go to nonlinear, and then go to bend. Just click create. So now it puts this big old stick there. So I'm going to press Control Space because I was in, I forgot what it's called, Pro mode or something. And in the bend, in the channel box, there's a bend input. So what we need to do first is change this bend handle. So if I look in the outliner somewhere, it's created this bend handle. And so the low bound is the bottom bit and the high bound is the top bit. The curvature will be how much we want to bend the geometry that is assigned to. So because we want to bend it into a circle, into a wheel, we need to bend it around on itself, so 360. So the curvature, so I've rotated the bend handle down because it needs to bend downwards and onto itself. So I'm going to start to bend this curvature 90, but I'm still in the wrong axis. So I'm going to select my bend handle, and it needs to be, I need to rotate it in the minus Z, so 90, so I can see where now it's facing. Okay, so let's go to the inputs again, change this to 360. Maybe less. So it just depends how many times you repeated the pattern. So let's try 180, 185. Is that enough? I can just see at the bottom. It's almost enough. 180, 181. Bingo. Cool. Okay. So now I can get rid of this bend form if I want. If I want to keep it, but delete history, because you see all these, you know, vert merges, stuff like that. So when we were merging vertices, if I want to get rid of that but keep the bend deformer, I can hold down spacebar, go to edit, delete by type, non-deformer history. But I do actually want to delete the bend deformer now because I'm done with it and I want to continue modeling this wheel. So I just did delete all by type. I'm going to move this back to my origin still. I'm going to center the pivot. So that spacebar, modify center pivot, scale it down a bit. Okay, so once you've done the bend, then you would select the whole model and then merge the vertices. So I've just done that now, and you can select the very edge of it. It depends. If your pattern is incredibly dense, I suppose you could get away with not having everything merged together. But it depends where you're seeing the tyres or not, or whether you're bothered about it. So I've selected one edge and then the other edge. I might see if I could do this at the same time. So I'll shift select the other edge. And so I'm going to hold down spacebar, oh no, actually shift and extrude edge. And then press R to go to the scale. so I can scale uniformly down, and then I'm going to scale out a bit, scale it back up. I probably should have had reference up for this, but never mind. Okay, I like the look of that, so I'm going to hit G and scale it down a bit uniformly, and then scale it in the X. This looks more like a bike tire, so it's just observation. Scale down, and then in the X. So I'm just adding a few extra bits. Because it looks like a bike tire, I think I'm just gonna scale it a bit more inwards, because I think the tire is a lot thinner. That pattern just looks like a mountain bike or something. So one last time, hit G and then go to Scale tool, scale uniformly inwards. So this time I'm not going to scale inwards because I want that flattening bit. So it goes out a bit. So we're coming out, so there's sort of like fat lip out there. And then I'm just scaling uniformly inwards so we get this flattened in a bit. And then I'll extrude again, shift, scale a little bit. So I've not scaled in the X again, because when I smooth this, then I want this edge to be a bit sharper. I can't actually remember how a bike tire looks, but I'm gonna do one more scale going inwards. So press R and then do it on the X. So you see there, so it comes in. So then, actually, I might need to just include, so scale it in a little bit, and then press G, go to the scale tool again. So I'm just adding in that extra edge loop, so when I zoom in, you'll see now we'll have a harder edge here. And then if this was a bike tire, then you could shove in the frame for the wheel, just pop it in there, I guess. Great. So look at that. So looking at these edges, they're pretty hard. So if you want to fix that, you can click on the model and go to Mesh Display, Soften Edge. There we go. So that is my tutorial on how to create repeated patterns or tires in this instance. So I hope you liked it. If you did enjoy it, feel free to like and subscribe. But thanks again.